everybody. Welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. And we are really excited today to be giving you a bonus episode where we are talking about the new Father of the Bride movie that's on HBO Max. We have previously done an episode where we ranked the other four movies in the Father of the Bride franchise, I guess you could say. And we had a lot of fun doing that. I'm film critic Rachel Wagner, and Marisa Serafini is here.
Hello. Hello, everybody.
Yes. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. It's been a busy summer, but I'm excited to talk about Father of the Bride with you.
Indeed. Indeed. Yeah, the moment you said Father Bride, I was like, yep, sure. Of course. Like, we might as well continue. So,
Yes. So, have you had a good 2022?
so far, so good. It's been crazy like no other. Because fortunately, I feel like we're nearing the, I don't want to say end, but we're nearing the end of this crazy pandemic. So like work has been, all back in person and just
Mm-hmm.
keeping. I feel like I'm busier more now than I was even pre-pandemic in a good way,
Mm-hmm.
just
Yeah.
keeping busy.
Yeah, I know. I feel like I'm as busy as I've ever been. With we have Christmas. By the time this airs, I'm not sure when I'm going to air this,
Hmm.
so Christmas Con might have already happened or might be happening. I'm not sure, but just getting ready for Christmas Con, and then the HCA TV Awards. Basically, LA is on my mind these days.
Yeah. Are you planning on going to the Christmas con?
Yep, I'm going to Christmas Con. That's why I'm going to be in LA for 10 days
Whew.
because I'm going to Christmas Con and then staying so that's the first weekend of August, and then the second weekend I'm going to the HCA TV Awards, and I didn't think it made sense to go back and forth. So so I'm going to be there for 10 days in LA.
Dang.
And then I'm actually going again to California in September because I'm going to D23. So
Oh,
it's
right, D23. Man, D23 is fun. I was also considering of going to the Christmas con too. We'll see. Two people have talked to me about it, more
oh,
so than me approaching them. So
well,
I'm considering it.
if you need an extra, if my friend actually has a Saturday ticket, I'll connect you.
Yeah, there you go. Because
Yeah,
I was like, if there's any day of me going, it would probably be Saturday.
perfect. Okay, I'll tell her. Well, yes. So Father of the Bride, we've talked about the previous iterations of it. We have the films from the 1950s, and we have the films from the 1990s, and then kind of out of nowhere, there was all of a sudden this trailer for this new version in 2022. And I mean, I had not heard that this was happening. I didn't know, and so it really surprised me when I saw the trailer.
Yeah, agreed. It kind of snuck up on me
Uh
because
huh.
it was one of those things that just randomly popped up on the recently released
Uh huh.
when I was searching my HBO Max one day, and I was like, "What? There's a new one? How come no one told me?"
Yeah.
It didn't feel like there was any promotion for it, like you said. So
Yeah.
it kind of snuck up on us.
Yeah. Well, I think from what I've gathered on your social media stuff, I think I enjoyed this more than you did. But in this version, they have moved it to Miami. You have a Cuban American family. That's the new family for the movie. And yeah, overall, I guess what did you think of it?
I thought it was fun. I definitely sensed, some emotional beats the same tropes that we had throughout all the
Mm-hmm.
Father of the Brides. A wedding that's getting bigger than you can control, whether you like it or not. Of course, all the in-laws creating and stirring up, I don't want to say problems, but like, mixing
Mm-hmm.
into that craziness. So like you had some of the same beats in that sense. But honestly, it felt more of a standalone kind of like more dramatic, but I didn't find myself laughing like at all in this movie. It felt
Yeah.
very straightforward.
Yeah, I think that that's fair. It probably does have the least amount of humor of any of the movies. Even the 1950s, I think, is a little more madcap than
Yeah.
this, and they really don't have that much of him, the dad, freaking out about the cost of things. It's more his pride that's the main issue, as far as him wanting to pay for everything, and him being an immigrant, uh, and feeling sort of like he has to prove himself against this other family, the in-law family, that are wealthier than he is. And so it's not as much the you don't have that many scenes in this of like, I can't believe this is that expensive, or
Right.
that we're doing that. There's pretty much only one that I actually can think of where he gets upset about the Wagyu beef.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, if we're
Yeah.
having it imported. um, yeah, it didn't really feel like, because that was the big thing of the earlier movies, is that the wedding becomes so big, then that's a big concern, is like, how do we pay for all this?
Mm-hmm.
And but because the in-law family comes and they are very well to do, and they keep reiterating the fact that, oh no, it's all covered, it's all paid for, you don't have to worry about it. So it felt like the financial conflict is out of the way.
Yeah, it's
So
more of
yeah, it
a
is about it's more the character
mhm.
confliction rather than financial.
Yeah, I think that's true, and it's more of a, sort of a class distinction rather than the money, being it's more class than pure, like, dollars and cents.
Hmm.
Uh, and, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there were some things that I was very skeptical about when I saw the trailer, that actually ended up working for me. I mean, I love Andy Garcia. He's so good, and I think he's great in this. I think he's very strong as the dad, and just sort of this prideful, uh, in mostly a good way. Like, he's proud of what he's accomplished and proud of who he's become and what he's done for his family. And but then that pride sometimes goes too far and gets in the way of things. But I thought he was really good in this, and I thought that he and Gloria Stefan were a great match. And I was very skeptical of whether having them be uh, about to be getting a divorce,
Hmm.
whether that would work for me. But I actually thought it was pretty well done, and that you could understand both of their perspectives and how they'd kind of lost touch with each other, and that I thought it. You don't see that many movies about kind of marriage, and particularly in the uh, later years. You see a lot of movies about divorce, and this is about divorce, I guess. But I don't know. You just don't see that many movies about two characters this age going
Yeah, right.
through a
Going
divorce
through.
or working on their marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, if you take the financial story out and then throw in a divorce instead, I think that adds to the problems that this film had. And I was kind of like, I didn't mind the divorce proceedings at all, because like that's how we started the film off. Like, they clearly, this is a relationship, they've been together for so long and now it's deteriorating. Introduce a new relationship with the daughter getting married
Hmm.
seemingly out of the blue. So I like that duality in that sense. um like, and I'm glad that the whole movie didn't really delve too much into their deteriorating relationship, because I feel like a couple of that age, and not to say like they're super old, but like the older generation,
Hmm.
I feel like that's what they would do in these times, is that they would still be civil enough together to work together for their children, for
Yeah,
their
you would.
daughter who's getting married. So they put their differences aside enough for enough time to pass throughout this movie.
Hmm. Yeah, and so they have him have two girls in this version, Sophie and Cora. And I'm probably going to ruin people's names, but Sophie, Adria, Rona, Ronja, something like that. Um, I thought that she was really good. That she was warm, appealing. I don't feel like I've seen this actress before,
I haven't,
but
and I was watching her. I was like, she's giving me a lot of Alba vibes,
yeah, yeah, I
and
can
I
see
was
that.
okay with that.
Hmm. Yeah. So basically, in this version, she comes home and they're just about to make the announcement of that they're getting a divorce, and she announces that she's getting married. And evidently, she has had this workaholic lifestyle, and uh, she met this guy at work, and they fell in love, and we find out later that she's the one that proposed
Yeah.
because yeah, so that's interesting.
I liked how the typical themes that you would find in the 20th century movies, that it feels very traditional, like the man
Mhm.
asks, the father pays for the wedding, X, Y, and Z. And then this is where you can definitely tell we're becoming more modern in the modern times, where the woman's proposing, the other families are, contributing. So like we're getting away from the traditional themes, and not in a bad way, but also in a way that you're like, "Oh, right." It still surprises you, but also doesn't surprise you because we have
Mhm.
evolved so much over the course of 20, 30 years since the last movie.
Hey, this is David from the Piecing It Together podcast, a podcast about movies and the movies that inspire them. For over 4 years each week, a guest and I take a look at a new movie through the lens of what other movies we think were either an influence or connect in some other way. It's a fun, unique way to discuss films that leads to a great list of other movies to check out that either explore the same themes and ideas or maybe utilize similar filmmaking techniques. Including special episodes in our side series that twist the format, we've done over 200 episodes, so there's bound to be one on a film you've been thinking about and want to dig deeper into. So check us out on all the major podcasting apps and at piecingpod.com.
Interesting because the Sophie seems to have figured out this way to be a workaholic like her dad, but still be able to maintain a positive relationship. Probably partly because she works with the person that she's, in this case, it's probably to the benefit for her personality and things that she is working with the person that they're working with her partner, as opposed to with Ingrid and Billy, that she kind of seems like Ingrid kind of gave up her work and gave up her creative ambitions and things. They
Mhm.
talk about later that she the when they talk about the father-in-law that he hires her to decorate some of his buildings that he has, and she's like, "Oh, I haven't done it for a long time." So I think she put her sort of dreams on the back burner, which I think was more that time period where you see Sophie being finding a way to make it balance, I think, better.
Right, absolutely. And again, going with and being more modern, like that is something that would happen. That people, like, I find a lot of times in relationships that one usually strives more than the other. And I feel like in modern day times, couples are now getting to the point where they can both have successful relationships or careers in that way, while also maintaining a successful relationship. And
Yes.
I like that.
Hmm. I also think it's interesting. So you have Billy, the Andy Garcia character, who has this idea of the immigrant experience that you come over, that you learn English, that you park cars and you work and you basically the like old school idea of the American dream.
Yeah,
And so
work your way up.
the idea of his daughter going back to Mexico, even though they're all from Cuba, is really hard for him. He thinks he can't wrap his brain around that, which is kind of, I thought that was interesting. And then also when he finds out that the father-in-law is have kind of Mexican wealth, that
Mhm.
there's this Mexican beer that he owns this company, that bothers him. The idea of kind of, he sees this, I think, distinction between American immigrant story and people making money over in Mexico and going back. I thought that was, for this kind of a movie, I thought that was a nuance that was interesting with the characters.
Yeah, and I mean, and you definitely have that Mexican versus Cuban
Hmm.
traditions that you see, because I mean, we got Billy who's definitely Cuban, but embraces the American um, themes in that way, and like
Mhm.
that what America has to offer, like better careers, better choices, at financial success, and like he's definitely proud of that, which is great. So to see his daughter go to Mexico, I think in his mind kind of saw it as like stepping backwards, like moving in the wrong direction, not moving
Mhm.
forward, and especially
Right.
I feel like, not to jump ahead, where he finally realizes like the purpose why she's going to Mexico. It makes him consider like, oh, he was the one jumping to conclusions. Just because
Yeah.
you thought it was Mexico, you don't really understand the meaning and purpose behind it, which really checks him in a good way.
Well, and he thinks that Adan, the fiance, is making her go, when in reality we find out later on that she's the one that wanted to go, and he wanted to stay in New York.
Yeah, and
So,
also it makes him realize like, oh right, I did raise a good person.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
so it's not like a pat on the back, but it's also like, oh yeah, she is her own character. She is her own woman who can make her decisions, and the fact that she's choosing Mexico to actually help people for the good, for the better.
Mhm.
I think really makes him appreciate his daughter even more.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's interesting. So his relationship with Cora is a lot tougher. They seem to. This is definitely a parental relationship where one child is favored over the other child.
Oh, for sure, and
Yeah.
especially, I mean, it's so hard when you compare a lawyer career compared to a artistic fashion designer who, like, let's be honest, we can say that it's like more unstable, more financially
Hmm.
unstable, like not as planned as being a lawyer would be. So you can definitely see he favors and there's bias towards having a more successful daughter with
Yeah.
Sophia compared to Cora. But
Well, and I think
again, that's his traditional side.
yeah. Well, and I think he thinks, oh, if you're going to do something more, it's not really blue collar, but non scholar. You don't have to go to college for. Then
Right.
you have to like start. You have to work as work in parking, work parking cars. You have to like start from the very beginning, and he doesn't think that Cora should be helped by the money that they've set aside for college. That somehow that's like wasteful in his eyes, again, because he's sort of from this immigrant experience, which is interesting because if you really think about it, I mean, Cora going to college would not assist her very much at all.
No.
Even if, I mean, maybe I guess if she went to like, uh,
Fashion school, fashion design
yeah,
school.
maybe, but even then, I don't know if it really gives you that much of an edge up in your career.
No, and it's
It's not.
also different. Oh, sorry, not to cut you
No,
off,
no. I
but
mean, it's just there's just not that many careers these days where it's like, okay, if I go to college, I have the degree, therefore I'm going to get a job. That's just not the way college works anymore,
right,
with some few exceptions. There's engineers, there's nurses, there's things like that. But for the most part, college, you have to go to graduate school, or it's just kind of something that helps you, I don't know, become a more interesting, more well-informed person, but it doesn't really help you in the specific career path of like, here's this job that I'm going to get after I go to college.
right, and it's different for everybody. Like some people would benefit more from college. But I feel with Cora's personality and the way they established her in the movie, we're automatically seeing her quit a job, and she's kind
Mhm.
of like floating in between. So we know that she's not a person that like can fully commit to a certain place
Yeah.
or a person. So like they've already established that, and I don't think college, just as character wise, would benefit
Yeah.
Cora because she's kind of the person who's like, I just need a good opportunity and I will work when the opportunity presents itself. And
Mhm.
that's what happened. And that's not, going against like her skills that she already knows. She just needed the opportunity.
Yeah, I think that he sees giving money to Cora for her business as a waste of money, but in reality, him spending money sending her to college would be the true waste of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And I feel like that has changed. I don't know. When I went to college back in the day, I graduated in 2002. I don't know. I feel like there was still that sort of everybody should go to college. College is worth. And I feel like in the last 20 years, we have changed a lot as a culture. That I don't know. It's just not as expected or seen as needful compared to the way it used to be.
Right, and
Uh,
just like evolution, like economically, it would
mhm.
make more sense to go to college, get a good paying job 20 years ago. But now with student loans, and then
Yeah.
just like we're seeing all this younger generation making millions of dollars off of Bitcoin and like all these cryptocurrencies that no one still truly understands. Like we're seeing there are different ways that you can be financially successful
Yeah.
without education.
Yeah. I mean,
So it's just so different now.
and there's such a glut on the market of people with degrees that, I mean, there's tons of people working at Target or even like McDonald's or places like that that have master's degrees that have, and there's nothing wrong with working in those places. I'm just saying that it's just, like I said, there's not that clear of here's the degree, here's the job compared to what it used to be. That used to be a real filter for jobs, and now it's just not. And you're right, yeah, with the debt and everything like that. And the one weird part about Cora, I thought, is why does she's considering where she's at, which is basically zero. She's worked at this place for a couple months. Why does she have
Mhm.
her own assistant?
I
There's
don't
that
know.
guy that was like helping her do everything.
Or maybe an intern, maybe a given intern. Granted,
But
that might
she
not be her intern, but
but
I
she
didn't really think about that.
yeah, I just thought it was kind of weird that that she has this assistant Juan, I think is his name. That's there. And I'm like, wow, I mean, I guess most up and coming fashion designers would like to have a seems like a full-time assistant.
Right.
When she finishes all the wedding dresses, you see him in the background. He's like sweating and tired and overworked.
Well, I don't know, maybe he was paid by the in-laws. Maybe
Maybe.
they were bankrolling him.
Maybe.
I
I
don't
just thought
know.
that was a funny detail. Um, and yeah, so Billy says that he's going to make Cora work and she's not getting any favors. So that's his, again, sort of the immigrant philosophy that he has.
Right. No
Um,
handouts here, for sure.
mhm. But you do see the love that Billy has for his daughters. And I think that is sort of the hallmark of this franchise is the dad just finding it so hard to let go and just how
Yeah.
much they love their daughters. And you see the flashbacks in here of times of them reading or
Mhm.
talking or with the girls.
Right. Yeah, that is the moment, the running theme throughout all these is that they eventually the father gets to the point where like, all right, she is an adult, she is her own woman who can make her own decisions. And
Hmm.
especially where there's that whole blowout moment where they're all at the fancy house that
Yeah.
the in-law guy just bought, and and he was like, no, I don't approve of this, I didn't approve of that, I don't approve of your son marrying my daughter. And then the daughter was like, you don't get to approve of anything, you are just the
Yeah.
father of the bride. And at the end of the day, you're like, oh yeah, that is the title of the movie, but it is so much more than just being the father of the bride now.
Hmm.
And you forget like now with this modern day times, like, oh yeah, the woman can make her own decisions. And we are getting farther and farther away from those traditional aspects that we're so conditioned to
Hmm.
see.
Yeah. Yeah. So we find out that she's the, like I said, she's the one that proposed, and she says, "I felt it the second I met him. We worked in the same building, and then we worked on the same team." And they decide that they are going to get married in 1 month. So it's pretty fast
Very
wedding.
fast. Very fast. And especially when, Billy hasn't even met the son yet. And that
Mhm.
is a common thing with all the movies, is that the daughter announces that this is happening, and then we finally see the son.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know about you, but I was raised in the traditional sense that, like, oh no, my parents are gonna know who I'm gonna marry before I even announce who I'm marrying, or like, and
Yeah.
they ask for they properly ask for the permission for the daughter's hand in marriage. So, like, I'll tell you, my parents know who I'm gonna marry.
Uh-huh.
So
Well, I feel like it would be harder to keep it a surprise these days just because of social media.
yeah.
That if people would know that either you'd post on social media that you'd gotten engaged, or that you'd people see your family would see you all the time, with this person on social media. So this surprise, and they kind of make both of these parents sort of Luddites, that not good with social media. So I guess they get by with that, but I think it would be harder. It would be a harder secret to keep these days. uh,
Right.
than before. But what do you think of Sophie and Aiden, the actors? Do you think they had pretty good chemistry?
S- Sophia
So her
and
Sophia and Aiden. So Diego Bonita was the actor's name.
oh yeah.
Uh,
I liked it. They were cute. Quite honestly, I thought she was the stronger actress,
mm-hmm.
stronger character, and Diego was just kind of there along for the ride. But I, like, not to say I didn't
Mm-hmm.
like him, but he just he just felt like it was such a B character for
Yeah.
me. I felt like she's definitely the bigger character, and he was just kind of in her shadow a little bit. So,
Yeah, he was
I,
definitely a more minor character. He does have his moments, like particularly with the bachelor party we'll talk about, that I felt like I got to know him pretty well. I think that they did have a nice chemistry though together. It was a believable couple. I could imagine these people
oh
being
yeah,
together.
yeah. I can believe that they they started off as coworkers, friends, turned into something more. But
Hmm.
it was so clear that she wore the pants in the relationship.
Yeah, no, that's true. Um, and then we have they have the whole discussion about uh, the Quilites, I think it's Quilites, that it's Aiden's pet name for Sophie, and Billy says the stories behind the nicknames are never as good as the nicknames themselves.
Yeah, oh, and I was like, oh, that's so mean to say. And that just totally shows your dislike for this man, but like, and it just made Billy
Mm-hmm.
like really look bad in that situation.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's definitely an inside joke, an inside story, but that doesn't mean you have to, crap all over it just because
Yeah.
you didn't get it.
Yeah. But they also, yeah, I agree. That was, you should just kind of go, oh, that's cute. That's cute. But he does kind of, in the end, he says, of course you have my blessing. But she says that we're supporting each other and we're not making decisions based on money.
Hmm.
And I think that's, again, where his sort of immigrant experience comes into play, that he had to base kind of everything on money, when he was raising his family
Right.
and, working 80-hour weeks and things like that, that now she has the luxury of being able to say that. And I think that that's hard for him to kind of hear in a way, to just sort of the major kind of burden on his life is
Was
just kind of
financial struggle.
it's just kind of washed away as if it was nothing, that. And
Uh,
like, on one hand, you're probably glad that you gave your daughter that ability, but on the other hand, it probably makes you cringe a little bit.
right, and you definitely saw that. Like, you applaud him for working so hard and like earning what he's worked hard for, and have now finally having a successful life for it. And like, that's what I feel like what parents do. They work hard so they can have a better life for their children, and that's exactly
Hmm.
what he did. So when he hears that, uh, you know, she doesn't have financial struggles, and that way it kind of hurts him a little because it's like, well, I had a struggle, why can't you
Yeah.
struggle a little bit? But like,
Yeah.
no, you struggled exactly for the reason why she shouldn't have to struggle.
Yeah.
So like that was hard for him as a man to, really accept. Like, oh man, but like you gotta work hard just a little bit.
Mhm.
You have to grind just a little bit.
And I think that Billy is actually probably the most realistic of the 3 dads that we've gotten in this
Yes,
franchise. I mean, and
agreed.
yes, it makes this movie not as funny because it's not as over the top. So,
Hmm.
what are you gonna do? But pretty much all of his responses are realistic, I think, to what somebody in his position, his character and everything, like, they're just not as you don't have anybody flipping out over hot dogs in this movie,
Right.
you know?
Um, or anyone climbing out of windows to spy on other people.
Right, right. Yeah.
Um, as much as we love Steve Martin, we do love that aspect of him too. But I think like that's the thing with Andy Garcia, that we know he's so, as an actor, he's so charming and he can be
Mhm,
charming. But I felt like this was one of his less charming roles, and like you said, more realistic. But
mm,
I think that's what also works against for the themes of the movie. Like I think we're so used to Father of the Bride being comedies,
mhm,
and him Billy being so realistic to the point it wasn't even funny anymore. It was just
uh-huh.
too real to be true, to be funny.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, I think in a way, though, you have to do something different. So I appreciate the fact that they found kind of a new way to tell the story, because if it was just a repeat of the other 2 that we already seen, then, that would be
Right.
boring in its own
This is
way,
just like painting something the same thing a different color.
Like, maybe they went too far in one direction, but, I don't know, I appreciate that we got a diverse story with a very with this family that felt real to me. I did think that the wedding planner was pretty funny. This is her name's Natalie Vance, actress Chloe Finerman,
Mhm.
and she had some pretty, I thought, good lines. She's nowhere near as over the top as Martin Short, but you're
Frank.
never gonna get there, I feel like. So you have to do something different.
I know,
Uh,
and I don't know, for me it just, I mean, as much as we love Martin Short and Frank, and as outrageous and over the
yeah.
top he was, that's what made him funny.
Hmm.
But I think again, this movie was so realistic that she was such a Gen Z, like up to date, kind of person in it with the useful, and like all of her references were like social media and
Hmm.
influencers, and I'm like, I'm not sure if that is going to age well in another 30 years. I
Yeah,
mean,
that's fair.
we
That's
watched the
fair.
90s films, and they still age pretty well 20, 30
Yeah.
years later. And like with her lines, it is so up to date with social media that I don't feel like it's going to age well. And maybe just my personal preference, girls, influencer, annoying girls like that just like irk me. So
Hmm.
I didn't really enjoy her
That's
at
fair about
that much.
the like legacy. Will it still be funny in 10 years, 20
Right.
years? That's fair. I did think there were some funny lines. She says the um the flamencos and flamingos. They're like, "What are you talking about?" And and I also thought it was funny when he's like, "I don't know what Latinx means," and then she says, "Because I
Right.
know my Latino friends are very divided on Latinx. Some of them like it and think it's empowering or whatever, and others think it's stupid and they don't like it." I've heard the debate, and so that was funny. There's definitely something Billy would say is, "What is Latinx? What are you doing?" And then when she's like, "That's a teachable moment," that
Yes.
was funny.
Yeah.
It's not a
So
culture.
like,
It's not cultural appropriation. It's cultural celebration.
right. Like, and like that was her humor, was her ignorance, her cultural ignorance in
Hmm.
that sense. Um, yes, funny in the moment, but again, I don't think it's going to age well
Yeah.
because it could be considered borderline politically incorrect. And
Well, I mean, that's because
I
it was
just,
trying so hard to be politically
right,
correct that therefore it wasn't politically correct, which I thought was funny. But
which
yeah,
makes it funny.
it's a
Yeah.
fair point. Uh, then basically, Billy wants to have the wedding at the Biltmore Hotel, which is a hotel he was on the renovation committee for. So he's very proud of it. He has a good relationship with them. I don't really understand why they have a problem with the Biltmore, but they're perfectly fine with this giant house that his
Right.
father bought and fine being on a yacht. How is that more? I mean, they can have a DJ at the Biltmore. I didn't really understand why they were not into this idea.
I think it was more so that the fact that like he felt like he was losing his control over the decisions, that was a venue that he wanted.
Well, no, I know,
And
but why? I don't understand why Sophie and Adon were against the Biltmore.
oh, maybe
They said it
it
was too
could
formal, but yet they're finding this
too far.
super fancy wedding at this house, very fancy house, and at a yacht.
Right.
You
Uh,
know,
I don't know. Though, like their decision making is very questionable. I kind of I kind of agree. It's like you say you want a smaller wedding, but you're okay with bigger locations. So they were kind of back and forth because it made me watching this movie made me think like they don't really know what they want. Like they
yeah.
want a smaller intimate wedding, yet they're totally okay with inviting like a whole family and more people if it's going to be paid for by the father or like
Mm-hmm.
by what is it? Not Diego's father. Oh, Diego's
Yeah. They
the
have
Adon's father.
they've combined 1,000 people that they want to invite to this wedding. And
Yeah.
Sophie and Adon are like, we only wanted 50 people. But it's hard when especially when you've lived at a place your whole life. You have all these connections, people that you want to invite to the wedding, especially if you're a businessman like he has. He's going to want to invite Billy's going to want to invite his clients, other people, and then the same thing on the other side with Herman. So you don't want to be rude, but then you also don't want to have a wedding that you don't want to have. So I don't know. I agree. I don't think that Sophie and Aidan had very realistic ideas of kind of what they wanted, and they were, I guess, for some reason against the Biltmore. I would love to get married to the Biltmore. But I did
Right.
think that one of the funniest lines in the movie was from Natalie when she says, "I wanted a Sex in the City theme for my bat mitzvah, but my parents wouldn't allow it. I'm a Charlotte and I'm a Samantha, and you, Missy, need to be a little Carrie in this narrative, while Mr. Big over here needs to stop mansplaining how to throw a wedding." Okay, Poppy, check it.
Yes.
That was
That
very funny.
that was funny. Again, with the up to date references that we also know, because I feel like Sex and the City is still a show that's very much in the
Yeah.
zeitgeist. But again, will it be funny in 30 years now? From now, who knows?
Mm, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I guess that's true, but especially with this being on HBO Max and Sex and the City's on HBO Max, like
Yeah.
it kind of it makes sense. And I've just been recapping Sex and the City on the podcast, and so it made me
Oh, really?
laugh.
I have to admit, and I am a woman, I have never seen an episode of Sex and the City. I'm still behind.
Well, you
I'm
can listen
still
to our
behind.
recap. Start watching.
I know. I know. I got to get with it. I'm still behind. Like that, and because I feel like it's sorry not to completely go off a tangent, but like
Uh-huh.
Sex and the City and Golden Girls, people are always like, "I'm this character. I'm this character. I'm this character," and I was like, still have never seen an episode of either, and I was like, I don't know, like if it's like based on personalities, sure. But
Yeah.
I could not tell you if I was a Carrie or a Samantha because I've never seen it.
It's a pretty
Or
good
a
show.
Rose or a Blanche, I don't know.
Oh, yeah. So Billy talks to Aiden about the nonprofit, and this is where he starts to learn that that this wasn't. He thought this was his idea when it's really her idea. And we have this whole scene where Aiden feels sorry for the boxer, and he doesn't watch sport. That was funny. And then he's like, "I like hiking." Billy's like, "Hiking is not a sport." That's funny.
Hiking totally could be a sport. I love hiking. I'm biased.
Yeah.
But yes, also funny because it just shows that It is such a millennial thing to like hiking compared to those who like sports. But
Mm-hmm.
I like sports too, so
Yeah.
I don't know. It just vastly shows the differences between these generations.
I am not like opposed to sports. I just don't have time. I don't have time to invest in it. And
Fair.
I watch the Olympics when they
Love
come
the
around,
Olympics.
but that's about it.
Fair. Like I could
Um,
tell you anything when it comes to NBA. You'd be surprised. Like you mentioned NBA, I could go all day.
nice.
So,
Well, Billy is pretty, I think, jealous of Herman, the father in law character. He finds out, oh, he has a soccer team, he has a yacht, and that he owns this beer company in Mexico. It's just a different kind of money than he has. Also, he's kind of concerned about the fact that he has this new wife and baby, this super young that he thinks is his daughter at first.
oh, right. That was awkward. That was
That
so
was very
awkward and
awkward.
painful to watch. But I'm
um,
like, yep, that's what people do these days. You have a
mhm.
sugar daddy.
I thought a really good moment in the script is they have this whole conversation about why they're speaking English.
Hmm.
And the one says, they say, why do you speak Spanish? And they say, of course they speak Spanish. And they have this whole conversation about, again, being immigrants and wanting to fit in. And so I thought the script for this kind of this, let's just say that this script could have been so lazy. Just we've got the IP, we're just going to pump it out. But there were
Hmm.
these moments where I thought they really were talking about realistic situations that this family would be dealing with, and the Latino experience, the Cuban American experience. I thought that particularly this whole scene where they were talking about why they are speaking English, I thought was a nice moment in the script.
Yeah, and I like that because it makes you appreciate everything that they went through and like how hard they had to work to get to where they are. And it does show because like even though they are different cultures than us Americans, but they're in the
Hmm.
American setting, that like those themes of just working hard and providing for your family, no matter what part of the world you're in, like that still resonates with everybody. and
Hmm.
um and that's where you like them more as characters, and
Yeah.
and also like kind of explains the motivation behind their decision making.
Yeah. We'd like to take a second from this episode of the podcast to celebrate our sponsor of this episode, and that is the Hallmarkies Patreon.
Do you love Hallmarkies podcast?
Do you want an inside scoop into what happens on the podcast?
Do you want early access to episodes and loads of cool perks?
Now is the time to become a patron of Hallmarkies Podcast.
By becoming a patron, you get to access our patron Facebook group.
You can request episodes or even be a guest on the podcast.
And most importantly, any patron can join our monthly movie watch-alongs with stars like Paul Campbell, Natalie Hall, and more.
It's as low as $2 a month to join in and become a special part of the Hallmarkies family.
Please consider, and we will love you forever.
Go to patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
That's patreon.com/Hallmarkies.
And they have this whole scene where this is the one moment where he gets kind of upset about costs, where there's going to be 1,000 guests, $10K on fireworks, uh, and
Yep.
and then the Wagyu beef, and they're like, "What? That's not Mexican," and stuff, or Cuban. And they get into this big fight at the mansion, and that's when when Sophie says, "You're just the father of the bride. You don't get to approve who I marry."
Oh yeah. Yeah, and that was painful to watch because it shows that she is also so independent, and it's like, has our generation really evolved that much that like you're only the father of the bride and you don't get to provide or have a say in anything more than that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so painful to watch because she is her own dependent woman, and if you're gonna keep your father at arm's length like that, it's like, do you even want to have your father at the wedding anymore? Like how
Right.
much of it, like it just completely stripped away Billy's power.
Mhm. Yeah, so then the next day he comes and apologizes, he brings snacks, and, it was a nice this was a nice depiction of sort of Miami. I liked the scenes in the, Domino Park and then, some of the other scenes throughout the city. I thought that was it had a sense of place, this movie, which was nice.
Yeah, agreed.
Mhm. And then, they what did you think of Cora's designs, for particularly the wedding dress?
Gorgeous. I love that pot of blue. It
Mhm.
looks so pretty compared to, because we see her slow progress throughout the movie, and it's like ever changing in looks, and then
Mhm.
we're constantly getting the updates of like, is it going to be done in time? This
Yeah.
isn't working. Do you have enough material and money? Yeah. So like, as audience, we're like, oh, is she even going to pull this off in the short turnaround? But also the way it turned out, and then how she just physically rips those god awful shoulder pads that
Yeah.
would not fly in today's time anymore. It just really shows that, oh, girl has it. She does have
Mhm.
talent. She does have a vision. Yeah, and she works when I don't want to say works well under pressure, but she can deliver.
And
Um,
it did
and
feel like a realistic dress for someone with her skill set to make. Like I didn't look at it and be like, "Oh, come on. She would never have been able to make that dress by herself." It felt like, okay, this feels like she made a pattern and she was able to construct it and it seemed simple enough but pretty for her skill level. So I appreciated that.
and she made
And
multiple
mhm,
dresses too.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
props.
And then we have the storms coming, um, and there's the wedding rehearsal over on Miami Island. That's where the house is. And we have the scene between Billy and Aiden where he says, "My whole family is falling apart."
Hmm.
And that's when he tells him about the divorce. And then Aiden says, "It wasn't my idea to go to Mexico. She found a job that mattered to her." And so that kind of makes Billy change his mind about also the fact that Billy is not into the bachelor party at all. He's just kind of, Aiden is not into the bachelor party at all. He's just awkward and doesn't like it. And
Right.
uh, I don't know. You just get the impression like this guy's a really good guy,
Yeah,
good
he's a
dude.
good guy. He's
Yeah.
not a player in that sense, and it doesn't seem like he's the kind of person who like gets off on bachelor parties like that. Like,
Hmm.
it doesn't seem like that party goer, crazy young
Yeah.
millennial in that
It
sense.
endears you to him.
Yeah, you're like, no, he's actually a really good guy underneath who's not over the top and is a good match for Sophia. So
Hmm. Hmm. So then the next day, the rehearsal dinner happens. Rehearsal, wedding rehearsal happens, and Sophie and Cora get in a big fight, and then Cora overhears Billy talking about the divorce with Junior, and then because she's underneath all of the coats or whatever, and she says, "You all are getting a divorce," and then she goes out and announces it to everyone.
yeah,
And this was the blender moment for this version, where in the 1991 version, she gets upset about the fact that he had bought her a blender. But I actually think this is a much better conflict. I mean, that just seemed so over the top, and silly to me, especially
right.
to the fact that my dad had just gotten my mom that blender. So we were like, "Dad, terrible gift."
Yeah,
Um,
it's just like,
but
are you that stressed that you're upset over an inanimate object who's literally not hurting anybody
yeah, and
compared
that like
to,
the, it's just
yeah.
it's like they say, it's just a gift. You thought you might want to blend something. It just makes her seem ridiculous. But in this one, like her getting upset over the fact that she's like the last person in the family to evidently know about it, and the
Mhm.
fact that this couple that her parents, this couple that she thought was so great, doing so great, is struggling like that. I think makes sense why she's very upset. And again, we're talking more about the realism. Maybe it is less funny than the blender scenes, but I think that this is one of the best conflicts, last minute conflict that we've seen in these movies.
Yeah, and realistic in the sense because like it is the dichotomy of two different relationships. The one that's starting and start
Mm-hmm.
about to get married and start a new life compared to one that's been together for so long and deteriorating.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. The way that she blurted it out in front of everyone was like that felt like very over the top cinematic in that
For
sense.
Cora, yeah.
Yeah, but also we finally got that moment out. Like, when is everyone gonna find out? And
Mm-hmm.
un- unfortunate as it did come about to everybody's realization, like it needed to be done.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
quite
and so
honestly, yeah. Oh, sorry.
no, no.
Like quite
The,
honestly, I don't think the divorce was like ever really settled either. Like, did they get a divorce or did they not? I don't know. It became such a big conflict, and yet we didn't really get a resolution to the storyline either.
well, I think at the end with them kissing, and I think you definitely get the feel of okay, they're gonna try and reconcile.
Yeah.
Uh,
Go
but
to
it
Greece, maybe figure it out.
maybe yeah, go to Greece. I mean, I liked this whole scene between Billy and Sophie when he says, "I stopped being fun. I stopped being her friend." That whole conversation was really, I thought, well done. And then I loved the whole scene where there's the stormy night, them all together, and you see the flashback from when it happened when they were young. Then they're all in the bed watching Casablanca, and then you hear as time goes by. I thought that was such a nice,
Yeah.
sweet scene.
Yeah. And who doesn't love Casablanca to like
Mm-hmm.
really put things into
Yeah,
perspective for everybody's life? Yes. I enjoyed that too. That was a nice button.
it was really good. I do think that we're getting when we get to the wedding shenanigans, it gets a little much for the tone that this movie has established up until now. It gets a little crazy, but basically there's been this huge storm, hurricane, the ruined all of the beautiful wedding preparations that they had, which would be pretty sad, and then the one bridge to Miami Island is destroyed, and so they can't get over there.
Collapse.
It's a
Um,
mess.
yeah, and it's unfortunate. It literally took a natural disaster to stop the wedding.
Mhm.
To stop this planned wedding. And I felt so bad for the assistant. He had to like he was stranded over there, and like how's he gonna get back?
He had to swim.
He
He
had to swim.
swam.
Oh, I did like that. He's like, I did swim.
That
I'm like,
was
oh,
funny.
you poor boy. But yeah, funny. That was
Yeah.
funny. So like, because throughout watching all this, I was like, okay, what's gonna happen for this wedding to not happen? And then a
Mhm.
disaster happened. I was like, oh, good, over the top, but necessary.
Mhm.
Definitely necessary.
And Billy says, take it as an opportunity to have the wedding you wanted. And so they, both families, they pool their resources together to have the wedding at their house, at Billy's house, and they go grocery shopping and get everything. Basically, it's a big potluck. Everyone's just cooking, and we find out that evidently Natalie is a fraud. She only barely was an assistant for a wedding planner, um, and that was all kind of funny. And the Immortales is the grandfather's band.
The
They're
band.
back playing. You have Natalie officiating at the wedding. You have the just random cakes that they got
Like kind of
at the
Frankenstein
store.
stitched together.
Yeah.
Hilarious. But I was like, you know what? That kind of looks delicious. I
Yeah.
probably would eat that.
Yeah, all the
Maybe
food
that says a
looked
lot about
good.
me. I was like, it did look good.
Yeah. And they say sometimes life surprises you and gives you moments more perfect than you could have imagined. And I liked that both parents walk her down the aisle. That was really sweet, nice moment.
Hmm.
And and then you see Billy and Hernan, the father-in-law, have a cigar together pre Castro.
Pre Castro, definitely. Oh man.
And then Billy gives the toast about family, and he lets Cora know that he's going to support her in her business. And then you see Billy and Ingrid dancing together, and then they have a kiss, um, and that's where it ends. But I guess maybe this movie was benefited a little bit by very low expectations on my part. I felt like, oh, this is going to be quickly thrown together. It's just going to be, they're just working off of the name. It's going straight to HBO Max. Why aren't they putting in theaters? Like, I don't know. There was just a lot of red flags to me about this movie. And so then when I
Right.
watched it, I'm like, that was actually pretty good. I liked I thought the script was actually pretty well done. It had these quieter moments that I thought worked. Like I said, the whole conversation about why are we talking in English? Just like, I felt like it was a really good story about a Cuban American family. And I thought the performances were all pretty good. It felt like a real family to me. There were some parts, like I do think the wedding shenanigans got a little over the top, a little ridiculous. And I
Hmm.
do agree it's not as funny as the other versions. But it was way better than I expected it to be. So I think I'd give it like 4 crowns out of
Okay,
5.
that's pretty
I
high.
enjoyed it. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was like, they definitely benefited from the framework of the previous 5 movies.
Yeah, that's fair.
If you're gonna go into this thinking and expecting comedy, I'm sorry, you're not really gonna get it all that
Mhm.
much. Maybe a couple funny moments here and there, but like overall, buckled over
Mhm.
laughing, stitches in your side. No, you're not gonna get it.
Yeah.
Go back to the '90s,
Yeah.
and get those moments. But
Mhm.
I think that's also like why the '90s are so good in that sense because those actors are so well known for comedy. And I
Mhm.
wouldn't really, I mean, I wouldn't market Gloria Estefan, for comedy. Andy
Right.
Garcia, sure, he's been in some comedic movies, but I don't see him as a comedic actor. I see him as a more of a drama actor and a
Mhm.
dramatic actor in that sense. Like, so this one definitely it had more dramatic beats, funny at some moments, but
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, personally, I think I would go back to the '90s more,
Yeah.
for those films.
What would you give
For
it
the
out of
comedy
5?
aspects. I would give it like a 3. Not to say
Yeah.
it's a bad film, but I
I think that's
was
fair.
unfortunately I was going in expecting a lot of comedy and I
Yeah.
didn't get it. So it
That
didn't hit
makes
my
sense.
expectations in that way. But I do appreciate the family values and
Mhm.
traditions that we know and love and work, but
Yeah.
the modernization of those themes worked in its own way. So like I liked how they did update it to what we expect nowadays. Would it age well? That's also what I question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this would age
Yeah.
well in 20, 30 years.
Yeah, I can see those are fair points. So if you were ranking them, so now we have 5 movies, how would
Hmm.
you rank the films?
Uh, 1990s Father the Bride 1. Then I'm trying to remember how we ranked the other ones, but the '90s first 1 and 2 first, and then I'll go back to the '50s number 1, and then 2, then this one, the 2022 version, and then the third one of the '50s. What was it? Dividends.
Yeah, Father Still
Um,
Dividends, the second one there.
yeah, I'd rank that last.
Yeah.
So
So for me, I'm pretty close. I would have 1991 as number 1, 1950 number 2, then this, then part 2, 1990 of the 1991, which I enjoy all of these movies. And then last one, Father's Little Dividend. So I would have this
yeah.
one in the middle. But I was telling friends the other day that I can't think of another franchise where you have 3 iterations now. You've got the 1950s, 1990s,
Star is
and
Born.
20. What's that?
I would say Star is Born. There's like four
Oh, good
different
one.
versions of Star is Born.
Because
If you
most
ever
of the
want to cover
time,
those, I'll throw my hat into that one.
yeah, okay. That's a good example. That's a good example. But most of the time, franchises, they usually end up having like a dud,
Sequels.
along the way,
Hmm.
that there's usually some bad ones. I like all five of these movies. There's just something about the love of a father for a daughter that I think is timeless, and it just works. And I like all five of these movies. I think they're all endearing. They all work for me. And so I think it's actually a pretty resilient, interesting franchise in that way.
Yeah, and I'm glad that it's still going because
Hmm.
in another 20, 30 years, if they decided to make another movie,
Yeah.
good chances I'm gonna watch it
Yeah.
because like you said, the father daughter theme is so strong and that will span generations,
Yeah.
not just movies.
Well, let us know what you think. If you're listening, let us know what you think of this new Father of the Bride, where it would rank for you amongst the five films. And we'll put a link down to our previous ranking video episode. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And Marissa, where can people find you?
Everyone can follow me at Serafini TV.
Great. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all of our social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes. So check that out. Also, make sure you're following the podcast at Hallmarkies Pod and Hallmarkies Podcast, all of our social media. And if you are listening on iTunes, please leave your ratings and reviews. That helps us so much. And if you are listening on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that so much. We also have our Patreon group and merch store. So take a look at that. And thanks so much. This was so much fun. I appreciate you talking about this new Father of the Bride with me.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. It's always fun talking movies with you.
It was so fun. Bye, everyone.
Bye.